just to allocate responsibilities to prospective speakers. Without any waste of time, Your Excellencies, our Deputy President, Comrade Mavuto Pele, Dr. Govenda, Dr. Mashilo, Professor Chisom, Mamokhetsi, and Zilo, Director from Ditsela. We also having our under the leadership of both Comrade Xolani Dube and Siyanda Mtimkulu, our beloved, also joined by the UKZ press, represented by AD, all protocol observed. Good morning to you. It is with great honor and privilege to call upon my president to formally open our launch. It's over to you, my president. The podium is yours.
Thank you very much, Comrade David. I must start by apologizing. And it's starting from a very, very bad footing. When you start by apologizing, it so happened that when the planning was done, the book launch, so that the NEC will adjourn to join the book launch. So the NEC was supposed to be here, all members of the NEC. However, sometimes conditions dictate otherwise. Have to succumb and not try and oppose such. It is such that the NEC businesses that the NEC is dealing with. Former President Comrade D is better than we had expected. And many people have apologized for day 3, which is tomorrow. As a result, the President and the GS, on behalf of the President and the General Secretary. Let me then, Program Director, start by recognizing the former President of the Union, the founding member, President of the Union, Comrade Uncle D, Comrade Duncan, who's all the work of the Union in a number of platforms. He's a part of the board of the SADTU, part of the board of SAIHOLD, and many other responsibilities. And thank you, Comrade Duncan, for always being available. Let me recognize Dr. Logan. You are recognized, and thank you for availing yourself. Our Commissar, let me recognize from Labour, Mokheti, and also was going to be moderating the discussions moving forward. You are recognized. SADTU is here. I know SADTU and Comrade Babsi are here. You are recognized. Which I might have not seen. Allow me also to recognize the student chapter under the leadership of Umbuyaze very much. Sorry, umbuyaze nomthimkhulu. Odube yibo umbuyaze nomthimkhulu sibalo wami. Thank you very much for coming to grace this occasion. We used to say, sisase college, ukulungiselela othisha ukuthi baye fielding. All protocols in case there are people that we might have not recognized. It is an honor for me to have been deployed by the General Secretary on behalf of the NEC to welcome all of you and officially open this groundbreaking ceremony or book launch of a SADTU book. And just a few words, I thought I should first and foremost look at the character of SADTU, not just as a trade union, but as a trade union within the education space. Education space is important simply because it is a space meant to transform society for quality life for all. By virtue of education being a tool that can be used to qualitatively transform society, it makes education a site of struggle for the defense and the advancements of our own national democratic revolution. This thought gave rise for me to actually look back during the deep and very, very serious discussions that Comrade Duncan and many other comrades had during the unity talks towards the formation of us. Well, we all agreed that during the debate, they agreed that at that time they needed the National Teacher Union. They agreed, there was no problem. But the bone of contention during the discussion was the character needed to take during the struggle for liberation or within the context of the struggle for liberation. Others were saying we should solely focus on professionalism and not take away that we can, as a teacher union, disregard the obtaining material conditions under which education was taking place or is taking place at the time. Because education by its nature, it's not apolitical, it's not class neutral. Without going into details, comrades, because I'm not here to make a speech, the details about this debate or the views that emerged out of these discussions, finally, they agreed that SADTU must walk on two legs. SADTU, as a teacher union, must be able to walk on two legs, hence this book launch. Had we not agreed that we must walk on two legs at the time, I don't think we will have had this book launch. SADTU has always been muddied in the public discourse as an organization that disrupts education, defends teachers who are lazy and not willing to work, calls for strike, and so on. Empeleni, truth be told, SADTU, in the 32 years of its existence, has called maybe 2, if not 3 strikes. One strike was for recognition. Wherein we had a problem with Bobisu Brian, the then DG. And I think it was only for 1 day. Then there was work to rule. Other than that, I want to dispute that SADTU is calling strikes. You will pardon me, a comrade Itumeleng. The 2007, we had always understood our role as a professional union and revolutionary professional. So it has, SADTU has, since 2012, that SADTU called a strike. The character of SADTU as a revolutionary professional union and members of SADTU as agents of change or agents for qualitative change is clearly articulated in the aim of SADTU's constitution, the preamble of the constitution. With this, Program Director, I therefore wish to reiterate what I will have said, that SADTU's agenda has always been to transform society. Has not always been confined to work conditions and salaries, but developing policies that advance quality public education for the creation of an egalitarian society. Development through its proximity to the ruling party, through its affiliation to COSATU, through its majority in the bargaining chamber, the LRC, and the policy development platforms. If I can be controversial, Program Director, that is why to go on strike last year on the eve of the exams. It was a conscious and a revolutionary decision to say not in the name of our, we did not sign for 3%, but the NEC, having applied its mind properly, said, obviously informed by mandate-seeking processes. Because teachers of SADTU are not what is being said in the public domain, my President. There are one or two, like in any other family, but most of them are professional and they are working very hard. Most importantly, Program Director, this book has long been in the making, so that ngingasho ngayitholi sengisho engafanele ngikusho. This book or this launch will have not seen the light of day had it not been for the late Mr. Samuel Fenyane and Professor Michael Cross. God's plans and doings are beyond our comprehension as human beings, because both of them are no more. They are not here to see this launch, which is their work. Mr. Fenyane is a former researcher of SADTU. He was reading for his doctoral degree when he was called to higher services. And Professor Cross was supervising him. This book is an outcome of their discussions. Mr. Fenyane left his human existence in 2015, immediately after initializing this project. And Professor Cross in 2021, after finalizing this project. As to why, only God knows. May their revolutionary souls rest in eternal peace. This book, therefore, should serve to immortalize their revolutionary ideas, spirits, and foresight. Program Director, with those few words, you are all welcome, and the book launch is officially opened. I thank you.
Thank you very much for welcoming note, my President. Indeed, let their soul rest in peace. A friend, Comrade Samuel Fenyane. Indeed, my President, as part of realizing our 2010 vision 2, which is creating learning nation, this is a very, very much historic and defining moment. Prefacing this within the context that we lead by example as teachers through knowledge creation. And I must say that underpinned by evidence-based discourse, rather scientific evidence. Once again, I have honor and privilege to introduce the following panel. In our midst, I've got Professor Chisholm, transformation. And her latest book is titled Teacher Preparation in South Africa, History, Policies, and Practice. The publication year is 2019. The second one is Dr. Logan Govender. Who is Logan? Dr. Logan Education Studies at the University of Johannesburg. His research interests span from education policy, teacher unionism, and professionalism, and student epistemic success. Another panel member is our Uncle D, which is Mr. Duncan Handel, leader, and also it was Director General at the Department of Education from 2010. Also in our midst, we've got labor recently work with the City of Johannesburg under the portfolio called Environment and Infrastructure. And last but not on the list, I've got Dr. Alex Mashilo, if I'm not mistaken, is well known national television. Dr. Mashilo is a spokesperson for South African Communist Party. Govender to give us a book overview. Over to you, my doc. The podium is yours.
Sorry for the delay, colleagues. We're just getting this but anyway. Colleagues and friends, all protocols observed. 34 years ago, I was eagerly anticipating the start of a new job as the Undersecretary of the Teachers Association of South Africa, TASA, the then Indian Teachers Association. A year later, in October 1990, and TASA would start its process of disbanding and merging into SADTU. For me, it was time to pursue my other passion, education research. Research interests would be teacher unions and their role in education. Little did I know then that I would eventually have the privilege of co-writing a book on teacher unions, specifically SADTU and the struggle for professional unionism. My fascination with researching teacher unions would also result in a close working relationship over many years with the late Professor Michael Cross, co-author and co-editor of this book. And as you've just heard from the Deputy President, this book would not have seen the light of day had it not been for Michael's single-minded pursuit to see it through to completion. And also you heard from the Deputy President about the role of Samuel Fanyane, the former head of research at SADTU, who died tragically in 2015. So it's no surprise then that this book is dedicated to the memory of both Michael Cross and Samuel Fanyane, whom we describe in the book as intellectual in the struggle for social justice in education. As indicated in the introduction of the book, while SADTU is still seen as a product of the democratic struggle in South Africa, its post-apartheid role in education, together with that of other teacher unions, has become the center of intense debate. This book explores how and why this has come about. More importantly, it attempts to reimagine the future of education in South Africa and SADTU's relevance therein. It does this by examining SADTU's relationship with the state, focusing on the union's struggle for recognition and its involvement in the education policy arena. Four main questions are posed. What were the context and challenges that confronted SADTU in the process of establishing itself? Created the role of SADTU in the policy arena? What effects did SADTU's involvement in policy processes have on its members and broader South African society? What have been the main lessons for SADTU in the past 30 years? And what implications do these lessons have for SADTU's future trajectory and education development in the years ahead? Now, before introducing the various chapters, a brief word on what this book sets out to do and not. Instead, it examines a particular historical period, the 1980s to the present, which saw the intensification of the struggle against and the emergence of the militant teacher unions that led to the formation of SADTU. And it focuses on SADTU's role in and contribution to the development of the book is intended for a wide audience, primarily academics, researchers, and policymakers, but also for students, parents, teachers, and members of teacher unions. Thus, the book's style varies from academic to journalistic. So, all of you will enjoy reading it, I hope. Third, although the individual chapters are self-standing, they cohere around the theme of professional unionism, which is the theme of today's panel discussion as well. Now, Chapter 1, SADTU and the Origins of Professional Unionism, by Iron Rensburg, whom many of you will know as the former General Secretary of the NECC, and also the former Vice-Chancellor of the university where I work, the University of Johannesburg. Now, Iron describes the social and political forces that shaped SADTU's formation from the 1980s and its role in contributing to building the post-apartheid education system. Of particular interest is the development of an alternative and democratic conception of teacher professionalism based on both the recognition of the rights of teachers as workers and as professionals. SADTU's evolution and its conception of and struggle for professional unionism are analyzed through key shifts in the collective action strategies it pursued to establish, firstly, a non-racial teachers union and a non-racial education system. 2, a democratic and development-orientated teacher appraisal system. 3, a culture of politics of teaching that incorporates a democratic restructuring and rationalization of apartheid education. Now, the chapter concludes with a reflection on the impact of the transition to democracy in the early 1990s as a social movement union, had given way to a narrower unionist focus at the expense of professionalism. And development of SADTU, an insider's perspective, and I do hope some of our colleagues from COSATU are here. The late Ketsi Laoko, a former COSATU Federation's role and its impact on the development of SADTU. The chapter argues that SADTU's prioritization of unionism instead of professionalism between the militant teacher unions and the conservative teacher associations, which included TASA, the organization I initially worked for, was in forum the NTUF and the subsequent affiliation of SADTU to COSATU. It concludes with the assertion that gainsaying SADTU's achievements in the field of labor relations, particularly in the parity of esteem and status between black and white teachers, gender parity, simultaneously pursuing professional and policy issues to enhance the quality of schooling and address the material concerns of its members. I need my question, especially if I speak for more than 10 minutes. Making in South Africa. Title, and the rest of the title reads Exclusion, Contestation, and Collaboration. Those words are important. Here the authors examine the role of SADTU in education policy within the general context of teacher unions in the policy arena. The argument pursued in this chapter, first, throughout the apartheid era, teacher organizations were fragmented along racial lines and black teachers were excluded from policy-making decisions. Second, with the transition to democracy, there emerged a trend towards professional unionism and increased collaboration among teacher unions. However, SADTU's political alignment with the ANC-led tripartite alliance has undermined its independence in the policy arena. Some will disagree with this. And third, since the transition to democracy from the 1990s to the present, teacher unions' participation in policy making has been characterized by contestation and gradually greater collaboration with education departments. I think what the Deputy President said about the decrease in the number of strikes in recent years bears testimony to that. The chapter concludes with the observation that the key policy challenge confronting SADTU is to deepen the professional dimension of its policy work, whereby, as the largest teachers' union in the country, and we should not forget that SADTU is the largest teachers' union in the country, it is seen to lead the development of policies that benefit its key beneficiaries, SADTU's key beneficiaries, the children of the poor and working class. In Chapter 4, Organizational Development and Efficiency, Key Ingredients for Professional Organizational Growth and Development Challenges, specifically recruiting members, setting up branches, and framing its vision, mission, and procedures. A key question that the chapter explores is whether SADTU's organizational configuration was dynamic and flexible enough to respond to societal challenges, especially whether it was able to achieve its goals with its current structure and capacity. The chapter argues that SADTU's biggest challenge is the development of an organizational blueprint with what might be termed 21st century unionism, giving equal attention to both labor and professional issues, and accounting for technological challenges being unleashed by the fourth industrial revolution. Of the debate in the promotion of teacher accountability, here the authors assess the role that SADTU has played in the development of teacher professionalism, a big issue in education these days. It argues that this role has been constrained by SADTU's approach to unionism and professionalism, and that a new strategy is needed. The new approach should be based increasingly on the concept of professional unionism, which prioritizes firstly the interests of the learner as articulated by government and the public at large, and two, recognizes the precondition for the latter requires a cooperative rather than a conflictual relationship between different stakeholders in the education system. Professional unionism can also strengthen and enhance the accountability of all stakeholders through an agreed framework clearly identifying the roles and responsibilities of different stakeholders in addressing the challenges that confront the education system, not just teachers, but parents, communities, and others. Now, Chapter 6, Leaders, Leadership, and Change in SADTU. This is a fascinating chapter written by the late Professor Cross, as well as SADTU's very own David Matsepa, my colleague sitting here next to me. In this chapter, they map out the and the lessons and inferences that can be extracted from its experiences to inform its future as a professional teachers' union. The chapter pays attention to 5 systematic approach to the history of SADTU, 2, the backgrounds and the social and educational context which influenced SADTU's leaders and informed and shaped the nature of their leadership practices, 3, 4, the relationship of SADTU leaders with its membership and the impact of this relationship in enhancing and promoting better educational outcomes. And 5, very importantly, the leadership legacy. Now, the main argument put forward in this chapter is that as SADTU has evolved as an organization over the years, to have found it very difficult to draw fully on the political energy, the organizational discipline, the value framework, and adaptability that of leaders. The chapter concludes by exhorting SADTU leaders to be more transformational in their leadership approach, assert the union's relative autonomy from external forces, engage in critical introspection, and combat the organization's negative public image. Chapter 7, SADTU's future role in the South African education landscape, written by my colleague at UJ, Ahmed Esop, contends that the union's future role as a key role player in education is dependent on SADTU reimagining its role and reclaiming its historical promise in contributing to the transformation of the education system. This requires rethinking SADTU's role and understanding of 6 key issues. 1, reclaiming its roots as a social movement union. 2, advocating and campaigning for education transformation, not to say it hasn't been doing this. 3, transcending the unionism versus professionalism divide. 4, contributing to the development of education policy, renewing its leadership and the organization as a whole. The chapter concludes that for the continued relevance, SADTU needs to build and strengthen its alliance with civil society organizations, especially those that criticize SADTU and other organizations in the alliance, reset the balance between unionism and professionalism. It will be interesting to hear members of the panel's view on this emphasis that perspective that the book takes. Now, the conclusion methodological insights from the research and proposes priority programs that both SADTU and other teacher unions should consider if they are to remain relevant in the 21st century and of relative autonomy and social movement unionism emerge as critical constructs that can inform teacher union development trajectories in South Africa. From such methodological perspective, we emphasize that the power of history and historical inquiry serve as an important epistemological lens for our study, while activity in research especially supported by external partners, as was the case in this study, remains an ongoing challenge. Importantly, in the present local and global calibrate an education system that is responsive to emerging social, economic, and development imperatives. These include, among others, the national reading and literacy crisis, fourth industrial revolution, and pandemics. Teacher unionism in the 21st century will not only have to straddle the traditional unionism versus professionalism divide, but must also embrace these new challenges and their implications for school curricula, teacher education development, and classroom pedagogy. I think I should take this out, eh? Let me take this out.
Thank you very much for wonderful insight. I want to attest to the notion that the book was long overdue, since 2015. I remember during the conceptualization stage, we were at Vet Rural facility. It's in Akenhoek for information for chapter 6, me and Michael Cross. So everything was collapsed, and then we had to start afresh, and it wasn't easy. We have produced more than 10 publications. 12 this year. I've produced 2 peer co-authoring by Comrade Mokoena Maluleke. But throughout, we were 3 with the late Michael Cross. And I must say that our profound contribution to knowledge is beginning to be recognized by the globe, because our work has been cited from Asia to Europe. With those words, our panel discussion is going to lead by Professor Chisholm. Over to you, my prof.
Okay, thanks. Okay, the purpose of this session is to hear speakers give their views and opinions and perspectives on the issues that have been raised in this book. Most importantly, the whole notion of professional unionism. But before they do that, and I'm very pleased that we've got this particular selection of people, before they do that, I just want to give a bit of a plug for the book. I myself was involved in the very early days, and then have kept a sort of a watching brief on SADTU and looked at how it has developed and how Logan's work has developed, how Michael's project developed, how people like Duncan have continued to be involved. So I've been interested for a while. So I was very interested when this book came out to see exactly how it has been dealing with all the controversies and all the issues and the history of SADTU. And I must say, I was bowled over, and I really want to recommend that you read it after this session. I don't think everyone's had a chance to read it, not even the presenters, but let me say that it's a watershed. It's in fact a landmark in the history, not just of SADTU, but also in the writing on teachers in South Africa. Radical in its assessment and its analysis of where SADTU has come from, where it's at the moment, and where it's going to in the future. It's radical in its proposals that it makes. Whether it can work or not is another question, but the fact that it makes it is actually quite an important one. It's very insightful and thought-provoking on the way in which it teases out the dynamic relationship between professionalism and unionism. It makes us rethink the idea or the way in which we think about the relationship between education, politics, and unionism. And the way it does that is, again, for me, very insightful and very radical. So, I mean, it's not my job here to say what I think about the book. I've also got some criticisms and so on. But I do want to recommend that you read it. It's a milestone. But with that, and having said that, I hope I've laid the platform for a discussion with Logan in his excellent outline of the book for the speakers. And we'll begin with Alex Mashilo. So, Dr. Mashilo, please come up and share your thoughts on this book. We will have time for discussion, but they will lay the groundwork for the discussion for us. So thank you very much. Alex, over to you. I'm not going to keep time because I think that we're dealing with professional, experienced people who know that they can talk for long enough to allow others to speak as well. So,
thank you so much. You must just give an academic a microphone if you want to save time. They will talk forever. Greetings and thank you very much. Greetings to fellow panelists and to comrades and all-time union educators who I see, everyone here present today, all protocol observed. When I was invited last week to come, divided in my mind whether I should really make myself available. I had just landed from China. I received a copy of the book on Thursday. I did not read the book. So I had to go through the book. And I will say something about this at the end when I finish. And the second reason why it was a difficult decision for me to make myself available is that we have the of the Communist Party. Fortunately, it's not far from here. And it is a one-day Politburo meeting. So as the head of communication, go to the loo because you must compose the statement of outcomes of that meeting and communicate it publicly. So I release me just for me to come here and say I didn't run away. And unfortunately, because of those time constraints, I'm not going to be able to stay. I have one day, and then there is this funeral taking place tomorrow. So my profuse apologies for not being here. When you attend a book launch, you really need to be there and deal with the debates. And thank you, our moderator. You asked me if I read the book. I hope that I answered the question. And firstly, let me take this opportunity to thank SADTU for this project. As a young trade unionist myself, the first time, and please pardon me if I was ignorant, the first time I came across a trade union with someone who has a doctorate in its staff complement was in Germany. It was during our relationship as metal, IG Metal. I was so impressed. And due to advances that, among other unions, SADTU fought for, you have Dr. Matsepe there. That talks to SADTU as a professional union. I will come to that. And he just mentioned the number of peer-reviewed publications we are not telling our own story. If you go to the bookshops in South Africa, you can go to Exclusive Books, you can go to any. Most of the books you read there about unions and working class movements do not come from within those movements. And the things are not really so good about those movements. Of course, some of the books, criticisms, need us. SADTU was formed in 1990, according to the history of the union and the book. But its formation, it has a prehistory, according to the first chapter in the book. That first chapter reviews the formation of professional unionism, and it goes back to 1975. In South Africa, that culminated in the 85 is 10 years. 1995 is 20, it's 20 years, and then you take away 5 years, it's a 15-year period. And correctly, as the book says, SADTU was a product of the struggle for democracy. But it was also a product of the struggle for unionization. Unionization against the history of what happened in 1922, known as the Rand Revolt, Conciliation Acts. The president you mentioned, black unions or black teachers could not participate. There was a long history not recognizing as employees. So the first struggle that black workers had to win was the struggle to be recognized as employees. Then followed the struggle leading up to the formation of SADTU. And the formation of SADTU and other public sector unions carries for us a particular rich history. And this book battles with that quite a lot. You go back to the 1800s. That occurred in the mid-18th century in England as what Marx called the classic ground of the capitalist mode of production. Historically, unions were understood from the point of view of industrial unionism. And as it happened in South Africa in 1922, because of the pyramid structure of the workplace, at some point in their development, craft unions were dominant. Now, that requires an addition in the material we use in our universities. The theory, the conceptual theory, this book uses the theory of social movement theory, in which it looks at SADTU. So there is a bit of a contradiction, and sometimes the two are juxtaposed. Is there a professional union? Is there a contradiction between social movement unionism and professional unionism? Can a union that the book battles with, we will return to some other things and the criticisms leveled against SADTU, but I'm just saying within the curriculum, when we were looking at the different characterizations, if I may use that word, of unions and social movements, there is one discussed different sorts of characters or characterizations of unions. You can mention social movement, unionism, craft unions, and so on. Unionism. So this book makes an important contribution in dealing with that. And you can see that, especially chapter 1, the introduction, insights, and the themes are located. That's where they are located. So to go through the rest of the chapters, that part of the book, if you read the book, you will have to pay attention to that part of the book. And it is that part of the book that begins to lay the foundation for the other proposals. That I was struggling having read or reading the book. You know, you are talking about a professional union. You are talking two things. Perhaps these are not at the level of theories or concepts. For a lack of a better word, I can say a notion. You are talking about a union of the people organized in this union, unlike in my union where I come from. I come from the background of an industrial proletariat. The character of that union and the character of the union discussed in this book are different, yet both are trade unions. So it is professionals and it is a professional union. At least all of us appreciate the professionals that SADTU organizes. And then I would like to just take a little bit from this. Not only is that union organizing professionals, but that union organizes in a professional way. So if I look at the administration of that union must be administered in a professional way. If I look at the organization of the meetings of that union, when I listen to the spokesperson of the union or a representative of that union, I'm expecting to hear a professional articulation. Round of the proletarians, industrial unions, there they give you demands. At the big mass meeting in a factory, for a company or BMW, they give you demands. So as a shop steward or an organizer, you are left with, and I'm raising this because now I'm linking between the professionals in the union and the professional union. So in other words, where like the president, the point you were raising about the Public Service Coordinating Bargaining Council engagement process. So I would expect a mandate from a professionals union to come forward to the table in a professionally considered way. Because here we are not doing a book review, I would like to conclude as follows. 1, there is this article written by Joe Slovo called The South African Working Class and the National Democratic Revolution. In the article, Slovo says that unions do not exist outside of a class society, outside of a society characterized by the broader political struggle. Because the state in its origin is an instrument of class oppression or class rule or taking forward class interests. Unions cannot bury their heads in the sand and turn their back against the broader political struggle. I'm living that because the reason why I'm living that is because I'm dealing with that is that there is this conceptual framework of understanding worker power, We call it the power, derive power from their structural location in the economy or where they are. So by merely being a teacher, you are in a particular structural location. If you withdraw your labor in that particular location, something happens in the system. So we will talk about association. The fact that you came together to form SADTU, you have come together into an association, and associating in that way gives you associational power. There is institutional power, the one you were referring to when you talk about cutting short. Workers, and this goes for professionals, can wage struggles, but at the end of the day, they need all power resources. A power derived from entering into coalition and alliances. If you subtract yourself from that, you are engaging in logical disarmament, but you are disarming yourself. How are you going to link the struggles of your sector, the struggles for other things you mentioned? In the book, they say in 2018, we had a shortage of approximately 3,500 classrooms. So many other things. Those things affect society. You need to mobilize society to have those things. And as I read that part, I concluded, we are running short of classroom, but at the so, please, don't voluntarily disarm yourself. You are members of society before you are teachers. Build your societal power.
Dr. Mashilo, thank you. You make me feel a bit bad. I probably should have turned down the invitation. I haven't read the book yet, so I'm sorry about that, but I do have a copy I've just received. I'll certainly read it. But the leadership of the Union, Deputy President, honored guests, colleagues, comrades, friends, all. Let me start also by congratulating the Union and Dr. Governor. It is indeed long overdue. I'm looking forward to reading it. And let me say, I think the answer to that question is this thing possible, professional unionism. I have to say quite simply, I think interests which a union brings with the broader interests, the political interests, the social interests that are there. And I want to just tell you a little story and perhaps reflect on the leadership role of SADTU in formed back in the 1990s. There was a huge interest from the international community. It was part, obviously, of the interest in the anti-apartheid movement. Possibility of a black teachers union emerging, and frankly, the big international teacher federations were very interested. You had a large number of teachers that were going to add to their membership, but more than that, it was something you wanted to be associated with. So we had a lot of delegations from different international bodies who would come to us, and at that stage in the world, the relations of the teaching profession, you can understand a very professional kind of orientation, and on the other side, the International Federation of Free Trade Unions, part of the IC orientation union, and delegations from both of those used to come to the emerging SADTU and saying, look, we want to work with you, we want to help you, and of course, would say to the WCOT people, look, we like your professional outlook and it's good, but frankly, the history we've come from, we've got a union orientation as well. And they said to us, no, that's not a problem. We stand on two legs, professional union, no, not a problem there. Next day, the IFFTU ones would come. And they would tell us their story and what they could offer. We said, look, all fits very well, but you must understand, we're professional, this is the way we were. And they said, no problem. We're union, but we also have professional sides. Now, I suspect during that discussion, well, I don't think it's a coincidence that a year or so after SADTU was launched, we saw the launch of Education International. That actually brought these two, the union, the professional one, into a single body, Education International, which I think tries to epitomize this notion of professional unionism. And I don't think it's also an accident that our first president, Member TCM Dladlana, was elected to the leadership of that EI, recognizing, I think, the little role that SADTU had played in getting the world that this was not a two-sided thing, that in fact we could live together. So in my mind, I don't think it's very difficult to reconcile that, and I think it's been done in many ways. I think the harder question, and the one I'd want to pose to the union, is in practice, how do we demonstrate this thing called professional unionism? And I think it's a big challenge to the union, because I've just done some work on a recent paper in preparation for the 2024 election season, and looking at legislation and human resources, you teachers in the system. And the conclusion, I'm afraid to say, is that the two bits of legislation, in particular SASA and the Employment of Educators Act, the EEA, together work to hugely advantage teachers and schools over the interests of society, the system as a whole. In particular, of course, over the way that teachers are recruited and appointed and managed in our schools. Colleagues, this is legislation that was developed some 25 years ago. It is time that we ask what this legislation does, which I have to say gives both SGBs and teacher unions extraordinary powers around It might even be that we could accuse the unions of forming an elite compact with the SGBs around this legislation and to maintain 10% of our budget on human resources. It's the one thing the government has least control over. Government, Department of Education, you may not know this, has human resource development strategy. How are we going to develop our teachers? That's all very well. It's actually the soft side of things. It's easy to have and get done. We have no strategy that is able to say, this teacher in that school, off you go. Some of you might recall the late Feroz Patel, who used to be in the department, and he trained also down in Durban, lived in Phoenix. Saying, there's a school up here in Lenasia, they need you, off you go. Nobody asked him, nobody asked the school, the system knew that they needed a teacher there. When I was working in the department, I got a visit from a school from Eersterus. They hadn't had a maths teacher for over a year, and they came to us in the office and said, please, can't you help us? I happened to know that at a school not far from that one, there were 4 maths teachers. 2 of them were very good sports coaches, so they were kept at the school. Could the department say to one of those maths teachers, off you go, mile down the road, it's not as if we're moving you to another province, mile down the road, school needs you. No, can't happen. Didn't happen. Those teachers, those children sat without. And the truth is, this is having an impact, I think, on equity. We know what's happening. The best qualified, the best experienced teachers are migrating into your nice urban schools. The lights work, the photocopier works, the children are well behaved. Nice to teach there. Of course you're going to go there. Others, well, see if you can find a job somewhere else. The student cohort that is here today, it doesn't help you. At the moment when you make an application, you have to apply to 100 different schools that you don't know and hope one of them might, you'll know a teacher here, he can talk to you in the governing body and see if you can organize something. I put in one application. I said, I want a job. And later on, I got a letter saying there's a job at that school, take it or not. Yeah? Colleagues, we've got to find some way to stop this in the interest of on quality in the same way. We talk a lot about teacher training and the fact that our new teachers are not being fully trained. We need to induct them. We need mentorship. that if you can't place teachers. If you can't say, look, here's a young maths teacher, we want to put him with the senior one over there, you can't take them and put him in that school. No, he's applied for that school over there, and anyway, that school. This way, particularly, I think, as our resources are getting tighter and tighter. So my question, and I'll leave it at this, the system as it's working now, keep that union cap on and say, look, why should we rock the boat? It's not for us to do it. It's working for us. It's fine. Or do we step back into a professional role? Not a role about dressing nicely and arriving at school on time, a professional role in asking, if you remember, and the Deputy President spoke about your SADTU constitution, and I'm fascinated by starting a union. It doesn't say because we're badly paid or because our conditions of service are terrible, because we need transformation. That's why we have a union. Deal with these other things, but the reason for our existence is because we did that transformation. That transformation hasn't happened yet, and there's legislation that is preventing it. And the challenge, I think, is how does the union respond to that when it might, in fact, need something that doesn't necessarily help. It's certainly possible. Can it be done? We'll wait and see. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. The disadvantages of being short. I am Mamokreti Molopiani, a researcher, writer. Sometimes I really, like Alex, I work within COSATU at one stage. I was a researcher, communicator in COSATU, so I have union background too. Today, I just want to pick up from where Alex had left. And really, it was about the question of field, but I'm going to be speaking about unions broadly in the public sector. And one of the challenges emerging today for public sector unions, the existential question really is, how relevant are we in today's context, and how relevant are we into the working age group of young people that are coming, that are either entering critical? That's also a question that perhaps this book launch and going through that book will help union leaders and about it to say, where do we place ourselves in the future of work, even if we are a union that for a reason we seem certain that there is work for us, but where do we place ourselves in the changing workplace in terms of technological impact, but also in terms of the changing nature of the worker and the changing, the emerging, that appears simply because of class location within class location and the contradiction within that class location. And then I want to go touch more on what a union leader, before you are a union member, you are a member of society. That is quite critical. And I think when I was asked to discuss this on the profession, to really the modern sociologist Father Weber, when he talked about politics as beruf, as a vocation, as a calling, and when I tell leadership that SADTU has, or the kind of leadership that must be within SADTU, and it's quite critical, I think. We look at the paradox and of the challenges that the leaders are facing in today, but also the kind of leaders that are going to be taking the union forward as global economy changes, as the role of education is critical, but has changed from what it was 10 years ago. It's as much relevant as it was then, but it has changed, and the impact or the implications of technology on society, technology on government that has the bulk of the funding that drives education. That is quite important. But it is quite critical for leaders to do say professional unionism or professional union. What do we mean? Do we want to be a union that advocates and influence the development of policy, or do we it's that which affect the classroom, that goes beyond the classroom, that affects the child outside the classroom? And I want to use an example of the worked in significantly the mining sector. In one of the public imbizos that involved the department, the stakeholders, labor, the communities, and it was in the Northern Cape at that time. Speeches were given, government officials, and among the audience, of course, were a lot of young people. And of course, that one of the key speeches that were given, that they are a key stakeholder in that area, as more activities were coming, but also as mines in that area are adapting to technology. But also the fear of the kind of skills that is going to be needed relative to the kind of skills that the mine workers in that area has. Question emerged from a young person on the floor who asked all the people on the panel, I hear your speeches. I'm a young person who has a degree on the wall and cannot find jobs. How is all that you have said that to me going to put food on my table? I bring this so that it becomes clear that it is not just limiting or simply focusing on what happens within the classroom, what happens within policy development in education, the kind of education we want, the kind of curriculum we want, the kind of policy we want, how we want to influence. In the history and the context of South Africa, it is also about the social issues. It is also, we must always be cognizant that we do not room, and what is affecting performance in the classroom, and what is affecting you equally so as a professional within in the education space. But then, of course, you come to Weber, whose argument of, in this, I replace politics with trade unionism as a locking relationship between professionalism and rationalization. And you look at how SADTU was formed, how SADTU has come, and how the union has. But then there is also the duality within SADTU and the duality that we contend with, or within that structure, or the simultaneous existence of wanting to be repertoires of contention and being able to take our issues out in the front, or in this instance, repertoires of strike and protest, and how that has an implication of how the union is perceived. It is quite interesting to learn from the Deputy President that the strikes that had occurred, the organization cannot change or cannot really influence, even if you put empirical evidence forward, is that you are a disruptive union. But then you go back and you look at the works of Buhlungu, who highlighted the paradox of democracy and the challenge that as South Africa became democratic, one of the challenges that COSATU, in this instance he was referring to COSATU, but that could easily be put through to SADTU and any other union. One of the challenges was being able to locate oneself within the corridors of power and be able to influence that. However, losing ground with what really meant, or in this instance, lately, or the past 5 years, what Gwede Mantashe called the preoccupation with leadership struggle, the preoccupation with factional battle within to depart from the alliance. It is probably, as the moderator has said, a radical position put forward, and it's going to be met with obviously resistance that that the union can look for within themselves, or as they move forward, is to say, and I like that this book, it is launched, because within the narrative about SADTU or the broader media discussion, maybe because I also engage in public media, within the broader discussion about the perception is empirical evidence about the history of the union and what the union is. So it is based on historical context. And I like the fact that it contributes to what the practice are, and it's not just rhetoric or philosophical speculation, which are quite, which often, when discussions are being made about union, often it comes from a point of speculation or mainly rhetoric. But if we go back to the importance of professionalism within that in a way cannot be disputed, because we are seeing, it's evident that unions have become a line of business in a way. There are institutions that are created, there is a machine that is operated mechanically. However, too much focus on that and moving away from the core of what SADTU is about. The core vision, I actually remember, is about the transformation and the development of education comes first, about that. And if we move away from that federation of what happens when unions become too bureaucratized and become a mechanistic and very much mercenary, as it were, in their approach, and how that takes away from them the real core of what they need to be. And I think the kind of leadership that is going to draw and moving forward is one that straddle both. It is possible, of course, for a person to hold both ends at the same time, have a contradict. As an answer to what Alex has said, are you a professional union or are you a social movement union? Which way are you straddling? To hold contradictory view and still be able to carry on. So, however, the kind of leadership that is needed in the context of Beruf is to one who will see that to be a union leader is not just a vocation, it's not just a work, but it must drive far deeper vision beyond what I aspire as a leader. One of the challenges that unions face in South Africa is being perceived and being seen as a stepping ladder to a better position, almost ignoring the reason for your core existence, almost ignoring the reason for your core function and why you are. And so as an existential question, them in the public sector, equally so in the private sector. One of them is the gradual marginalization of the activities of the unions, even within a government that they are aligned to. And this dual role, that you are a professional union, that you are a union of professionals, but also that you are existing within society, societal issues affect you, and so forth. You do not exist in a bubble. And then, of course, what for me is critical is the revitalization of the unions moving forward. And then, of course, the replacement of the forms of organizing and union activity as we know, because ultimately they must be anchored around social action, they must be anchored around engaging with communities, they must embrace at the same time emancipatory politics and develop a transformative vision, which already we know the union has talked about in a broader context. Within internally, one of the challenges you're going to face as unions, as a union, is the issue of class location and the difference that emerges from within, and how you, within the same organization, there's going to be differing views that departs completely from what may be perceived as the direction that they are taking or a union is taking. And that is going to be critical as to whether the union survives or not, perhaps more so than the implication of technological impact on unions, the implication of the changing pace of the global economy, the changing nature of what we do, what education is seen as, how it is positioned globally, and the role of unions in the broader context of South Africa. Ultimately, I think there is consensus within this room that there's a correlation between the quality of the education system and the quality of the teacher. So again, the word professionalism, it's quite important, and it's quite encouraging that the launch of this book has sought to interrogate it, even when that interrogation might bring about thorn on the side kind of findings, might bring about that which makes SADTU extremely uncomfortable, but also that which makes leadership uncomfortable. This must be contended with, and this must be engaged with up until the unions has the union has a clear picture of what it wants to do moving forward. One of the challenges that South Africa faces, not just in the public sector, that age group 18 to 25 that we see on Statistics South Africa that are entering the labor market, how relevant am I to them? How am I able to attract them? So it's quite encouraging. It's quite wonderful that there is a youth element within this room. And how am I going to reality? And will there be a vacuum in our absence when this generation, older generation goes? Will there be a vacuum? What happens when you cannot answer whether you are able to fill that vacuum? What happens when you cannot answer? Are we attracting more young people into the union? Why to do teacher training? Do not see the need to be union members. This is just not for SADTU, by the way. It is a broader question. Mining sector. Why does a young mine worker feel like qualified or a miner, a rock driller? Why do they feel like I do not need to belong to a union, but it is better raised by communities that are protesting outside the mine, and that when they give those memorandum, among the issues that the communities have raised, often our worker moving forward, that beyond interrogating whether you kind of direction you are taking, the characteristics, so to speak, of what SADTU is, it is quite important to place ourselves in contemporary context of what I like the most perhaps about this launch and this book is that it contributes to theory, it contributes to a historical evidence that is put forward about the union, and that will be readily available, because it goes against to break the many myths that are created about what unions are, or in this case, what you, moderator. Sorry I took so long.
Thank you very much, and also thank you to Buto and to Comrade David for enabling these perspectives to be put forward and for this platform to exist. So we now have time for questions. I'm not what everyone has said, just to say that for me the key issues that have come out are those of social movement, unionism, human resource strategy, and the international impact, that whatever this union does, what SADTU does, it also impacts internationally. So for questions, do you want to come to the, or can you just speak? Just introduce yourself before you. In fact, why don't we bring Duncan, Moheti, and Logan to come and sit over here? There are chairs. And then you can address your questions to them, and they can just speak.
Thank you so much. My name is Itumelen. I am of SADTU. I have some. Actually, first let's appreciate SADTU, the teachers, for the work they've done. Yeah. That's how we call it. Yeah. What comes to mind? I'm having listened to the inputs by the panelists, and Just that Alex is not here, but he's touched on some critical points. And the benefit of having read the book, but listening to the synopsis as given by the presenters going forward. The one question that comes to mind in particular is the issue of transformation. That's one of the key points, because the question is transformation itself salient or disruptive? You have to reverse the long-standing institutionalized, whether you can call it atrocities or whatever, but to uproot that thing, do we have to go salient? Because which now comes to the second question of professionalism, by definition, professionalism. Because as SADTU, and I think SADTU, we marry the two, the professionalism, because professionalism itself talks about the conduct. But there's another point on professionalism that talks about how the union is effectively run in terms of professionalizing the processes, the management style, and the effectiveness and efficiency of the union in achieving what it's supposed to achieve. I think that's one thing of trade union itself, because the whole notion is that SADTU should not. I thought we would have a characterization of what is the nature of SADTU, where the membership, that's 60 years, you cease to become an employee. And it means by definition, you become a member of SADTU because you are outside of the system. Now with the leadership and where it's going, do we have, because I read just synoptically to say it takes about 13 years for a member to join to become a leader. Through the processes, you start here, then at the site, then from there you move to the region. When you start to now with the question that says, with the aging profession, to what extent is it helping to the sustainability of SADTU with that principle itself? I just wanted to the last point that I want to deal with is on the issue of the comparison, I mean the composition of SADTU in itself. It used to be a craft union, now it is more dominantly, or should we say the active unions are the public sector, which are seen to be more professional than the craft unions. And understanding the site of struggle of SADTU as the teaching space. To what extent are we going to withdraw from our militancy becoming professional and not want to take up the societal struggle? Because I think I want to bring this part, maybe the panelists will help me. There's a new concept of when they say you disruptive concept. It's disrupting the order, the new order, to bring the alternative from the new order. So those are things that I was trying to battle with as the last point, because I am from a public sector union myself. Before I could join SADTU, I'm from Dinosa, the nurses. To understand that they were dealing with the issues of having the two legs within the union, the professional side and the union side. I'm not sure to what extent is SADTU battling with that, or by the outcome they achieve without compromising them. Because I can be militant but still achieve the outcome as a teacher from what I need to do. The contradiction that I was trying to battle with. Thank you so much.
Let's take one or two more questions, and in the meantime, just think about which you want to respond to here. Two more questions.
Be destructive, comrade. So, my name is Maki Nabeni. I'm from the Development Institute for Trade Labor, Titsila in short. Mine is not a question, per se, but a short contribution to the discussions that we're having here. As one was perusing, the book, what came to mind was something that is related to a book that was written by Professor William Mahoba. The book's title is called The Cockerel. Okay. I'll come to that because it's very much related. In my view, there's professionalism and professionalism, okay? But in a class, related, composed, society, who defines, professionalism, okay? Because professionalism is not void of any, class, content, given the unequal power relations, in any society. Okay. And what also made one, to think about that book, because in the context of that book, which is very much, related, to this one, it also talks about professionalism. But the question there was related to managerialism. Here's a short story. And when he arrives there, it's a panel of all white males. The question arises, where did you learn your managerial skills? And his response was, I grew up as a shepherd. And then everybody looked around and started giggling, okay? Because in terms of their class position and understanding of managerialism or professionalism, it's informed by their class position, in society. It's an interesting book, to read and try and relate, to the one we're discussing, today. So it also, if, the book, professionalism, to be precise, is defined out of, class relations. Last, but not the least, I want to thank, to applaud the comrades, who made an effort in, writing, the SADTU. What, in my view, is lacking is to talk about revolutionary professionalism, okay? Because in the formation of SADTU and the need, to form the union, okay, because, to form a union, is not an act of charity. It's informed by the material conditions in which comrades, found themselves. It happens in any, sector, okay. Revolutionary professionalism, so as to define you, yourself, because from the input, by the panels, why, SADTU was formed, because comrades saw a need to transform, education, and therefore that required, a struggle, okay. So, just, to close, Comrade Mamkheti, you spoke about the young people, distancing themselves, from joining the unions. I know you're drawing from your own experiences, okay. That reality, is there, okay. But however, practically, young people are now starting to gravitate, towards one, the level of, consciousness, okay. When people graduate and start, to get certificates, of course, they have their own aspirations, okay. But when the reality hits, when people start not to get, the jobs that they aspire to, then now they start to see. So I thought I should make those inputs. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. There was another question.
To everyone, I am Comrade Kolani Dube, the National Coordinator of SADTU Student Chapter. So you can actually see that SADTU is progressive. The issue of consciousness starts from an institutional level. You don't have to wait and get to the field before you're conscientized. Well, I will start from where the former president, and I think the union's quest in the struggle for professional unionism is a response in the challenge of education. So it's part of stepping into the right direction. I almost said I'm covered, but I didn't want to say it by the question that you had raised. It's what defines professionalism? From whose perspective do we define professionalism? From which stage? Is it from an Afrocentric point of knowledge? Because we would find ourselves battling the definition of professionalism only to find that it doesn't involve our lived experiences as Africans. And that will be the problem that we'll have. The reason why I'm raising this, Dr. Matsipe, is the fact that SADTU itself has engaged itself in a decolonial agenda. So one day we would find ourselves in a locked hall speaking about, were we correct to define professionalism in the way that we have defined it today after we have entered in the sphere of decolonization? Probably will change the direction, I don't know. But I'm concerned from whose perspective who is a professional. Does it involve everyone's lived experiences, or it involves a certain quota of people within our society? Because we have all agreed that before we are members of any union, we are members of the society. So for any definition that comes in, it speaks to our lived experiences. So, and thanks to everyone.
Okay, thanks. What I want to do now is invite the speakers to respond to any one of the questions that have been raised from the floor. Mama Kheti, shall we start with you? Do you want to come here?
That's okay. Thanks for the questions. In terms of okay. In terms of responding to issues about young people activity or young people coming into unions, based on the experience of what you have highlighted, that is a positive development. However, one of the challenges that we have seen emerge, broadly speaking, has been the fact that work has become precarious. What was once known as work has become fragmented in so many ways. And as such, you're finding that, and also you're factoring that the structure of the current, the structure of our economy in terms of labor absorption has remained mostly within older generation or within older workers, for a lack of a better word, and that young people are struggling to break into the labor market. That is not Mamuketi, that's PES, that's statistics South Africa, as you are seeing. South Africa has a national youth unemployment that is twice the national average, meaning young people, there's this barrier. And one of the barriers for young people to entering labor market or finding jobs is because older people are remaining longer in work. Many are supposed to have retired or left, but they do not. And so that poses a challenge for young people to enter the labor market. But also when you look at the economic reasons for that, the report by Statistics South Africa on the implication of earnings and income for women gives us clarity in a sense that it says for much older workers, the savings mechanism or the culture of saving has not existed that long because many did not, also because the income has not caught up, you know, when you look at the kind of incomes that they have. And so there's this continuous barrier that prevents young people from entering the labor market. And when they don't enter the labor market, and they are home, many young people, for example, in rural areas, practical lived examples, Many young people in rural areas that are not closer to find a union office and inquire if I can afford to be a member because one, they do not have an income. Two, traveling to almost 200 rand, depending whichever village they are coming from. My home village is Fafung. To travel to Bretz, which is the nearest town, a young person to return to work who does not have the 350 grant, or even when they get that grant, it is not a priority to say, I'm not working, but I'm interested in you. Some of the offices are in town, regional or branches are in town, so I want to go there. That becomes the barrier. But also, the economic realities and the priorities. What do I spend my money on? For many young people, to even be able to travel to the local government to get Z83 forms, that's over 70 rand. That income they don't have. And so I'm contextualizing this because I like to always bring it to lived experience and not just talk theoretically, but to bring it to lived experience to say, so many young people who are unemployed, there was a study, I forgot who did it, or a research, but one person was saying, it is far much easier for me to be dependent on my grandmother's income for food than for me to take the money that she has, the little money that she has, to try and look for a job in town because I have no guarantee that I'll get it. And for young people who have degrees, the unemployed graduate, who have studied and learned sociological theory and theories about the classes and work and labor, teacher's degree, some nursing qualification. The preoccupation is not per se, can I find help, be able to help me find a job, but their constant concern is the little money that I have, can I use it to access the internet or data to apply for work? So already we have young people who do not have the resources to go to town, but we have some young people who have resources, but they rather channel it to a manner that they find effective. And so they have not only social barriers and economic barriers, but they have to really spend money they do not have to be able to get a form or to apply with no guarantee that they'll get that job. So for many of them, when you engage with them, when you're sitting in mining communities and there's most of these protests are led by young people and women, they are the most affected, by the way, by unemployment and access to resources. Many of them do not have access to resources. So to effectively engage, yes, maybe some of them who find jobs, who are employed, finally join unions, but also we are finding that some of them place dispute with lawyers. Some of them prefers to engage in other forms other than actively participating in union activity or seeking. All of them are not becoming unions. You still have young workers who are in auto industry who, no matter what, will belong to a union. Young who are entering Volkswagen in Garanku, BMW in Garanku, and Nissan in Roslyn, in Pretoria, in the Eastern Cape, who know instinctually, so to speak, as it were, that when I want to belong to a union, perhaps because of the kind of union activities that are there, that we have seen happen. So, at all they are not, but the continuous, not emerging, the continuous trend. We see where those resources are prioritized for, and the desire or the need to be active or pursuing union activity. And then when it comes to the issue that was raised about whose in terms of decolonial thinking and whose professionalism is that. I think that is, I cannot engage on. SADTU has said, Dr. Matseba said it has taken a while to get here. So the question is the conceptualization perhaps then. How did we come to conceptualize and say professional unionism? It's an internal question perhaps, and maybe it could be handled by the contributors to that book to say whose professional unionism was it, under what context, and how did we come to locate that term within what we are discussing now, or within the book, and what it sought to do.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm going to respond to, yes, thank you for all the questions. I'm going to respond mainly to the questions around professionalism and professionalization. So I think it was the first question, or from the floor, who asked the question around, or raised this issue around professional conduct and professionalizing of processes and the way in terms of its administration and so on. And I think one of the panelists also raised this question. So, and I think that's an interesting dimension of chapter 4, which, and the title of that chapter is Organizational Development and Efficiency, which talks about that issue of around, working in ways, although we don't really describe it, it's implied there, but what the chapter does is it focuses on the that comes to mind when you talk about issues of professionalizing the work and the way we work. A related question was, I think it was the second speaker who asked, who defines professionalism? And I think that's really getting to the heart about what the book is exploring. Because would teacher unions, for example, prior to the establishment of SADTU and prior to the democratic era, the professionalism was largely defined by said this is how teachers are supposed to behave, this is what they are supposed to be doing, this is how they are supposed to be organizing themselves. Post-94, and one of when there was greater working together between government and unions, is the establishment through the South African Council of Educators, SACE, the Teachers' Professional Code of Ethics, Duncan. That code of ethics was a product of joint work between government and policymakers as well as teacher unions. So that is, I think it's important that it is a joint endeavor and a joint effort. And when that happens, and teacher unionists can say, yes, we've been engaged in a process of professional unionism, because part of their professional work is to contribute to policy development, policies and so on, but also policies that affect their own work and what they do, how they practice, how they conduct themselves, and how these policies affect their conditions of service. The student chapter leader on, from what perspective is professionalism being defined and looked at? And I think, and he raised this issue about, is it Eurocentric, is it Afrocentric? And of course, many of you will know that this is all part of the education decolonization debate, not just in relation to schools, but in relation to higher education. And of course, one of the important things that maybe the lesson arising from this question is, when you talk about, Afrocentric knowledge and indigenous knowledge, in our context, we always talk about Ubuntu, right? The whole notion, the values of sharing and learning from each other, helping each other. And maybe that is something that this notion of professionalism that needs to take into account very, very seriously and put firmly on the agenda. Transformation question, when we talk about transforming our education system, I think the decolonization debate and issues around decolonizing the curriculum and so on should be integral to issues or when we talk about transforming education. And of course, one very important piece of work that is taking place at universities now in relation to this is the development of African indigenous languages, so that English doesn't remain the dominant language of teaching and learning in schools and in higher education. So that is a big program and project that we should all dedicate ourselves to. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Logan, and really I don't have much to add but to welcome, I think, the inputs. I think it is important to continue discussing professionalism, what it means and who owns it, as it were. But let's not overcomplicate it, colleagues, because I think there's something in professionalism that has to do with the state of mind and is probably a fairly universal thing in the sense that, as an example, look, we want to organize Saturday classes, can you please come? Simple line as a unionist, how much am I going to get paid for it? Well, sorry, nothing. Thank you. Sorry, no classes. Professional says, my interest, not important. Interests of others, much more important. I'll be there on Saturday. See you there. So, colleagues, it's up to you on a daily basis in a sense.
So thank you to our panelists. I think it is 1:15. We've made very good time. I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank again Comrade Deputy President and also David Matsepe, whose excellent chapter with Michael Cross you must.
Just a few things, David. Number one, I think the purpose of writing a book is to provide some knowledge for me to incite debate and more research. There is no textbook, or I'm a teacher, there is no book that is complete. We have what is called a SADTU journal, and we need journals to be published in a SADTU journal. Hence, we must encourage participants here and other people to write. particularly on what you raised, Comrade Xolani, let's define professionalism in our own way through our lived experiences. I will challenge. Let's write articles or do some kind of a study around that. Somebody said there is nothing like revolutionary professionalism in the book, and as a challenge to SADTU. I think it's it's there in the 2030 vision of SADTU, where we talk. I know. Where we talk about our revolutionary tasks as teachers, to say these are our revolutionary tasks as agents of change. I think maybe it's something that also we must actually look at and read. But I also want to challenge you and my professors here about our education system. You know, I always have a problem if we talk about an education system wherein there are people who have degrees and they are unemployed. I have a problem with that. I understand we are in a capitalist society. As people who are educated with degrees, we become voluntary slaves or sophisticated slaves in the system to continue provide profit for the owners of the means of production, the capitalists. Education wherein somebody with a degree will cry foul of being unemployed, it means there is a problem with our education system. Because a degree, a basic degree, must be able to give you skills to make a living without being employed. Maybe your postgraduate degree must then provide you with specialization to whichever field you want to. But if I have done engineering, I have a basic degree in engineering, comrades, the education system must be such that I must be able to live without being employed. Sometimes in South Africa, we get excited, we promote people with the academic gowns marching on the street saying they are unemployed. It means there's a problem with our education system. Because an education system must be able to provide me with basic skills to identify means and ways to be able to live. And stop feeding to capitalism that I must be employed. It's something that we must look at as part of decolonizing our education system. That is why we cry foul. A pilot, somebody who's got a degree in pilot, I don't know what it is called, from Uganda, will come to South. Then we say they are taking away our jobs. Look at these Kakats and many others who are there. They have degrees, but they are here making a living. South Africans with degrees are crying foul. They are not employed. Comrades, understand the book as a book. I don't think as SADTU we are having a discussion of voluntarily, ideologically disarming ourselves. We are not planning to leave the tripartite alliance, and we don't have such a discussion. We member of society. Our engagement is still informed by our class positioning. Thank you very much.
It's never ending. That is why we do have a knowledge gap. And we do have the so-called Journal of South African Democratic Teachers Union. It's our journal. The purpose of having this journal is to call for young emerging writers or scholars. So our program is nearing to an end. But before I can take this opportunity to call upon that, with due respect, to hand over some token of appreciation to our presenters. Thank you very much.
They must come here, and then pictures must be taken one by one. So, what is it?
Yeah, without any waste of time, let me call upon Uncle D to come and receive his token of appreciation.
Age before beauty.
Followed by Her Excellencies Professor Chizo. Yeah, followed by my chief editor for SADTU book, Dr. Govenda. Come again? Yeah, as I was saying, our program is heading to an end. Before I can hand over to Director of Ditsela, let me just put forward that before you can leave, please just sign our attendance. Program Director ends here. And I thank you for your patience throughout my chairing. We learn by committing mistakes, heading towards perfection. With those words, I thank you. Over to you, my Director.
Good afternoon, comrades. Amandla. Union, viva. Viva. Viva Ditsela, viva. Viva. Viva ourselves, viva. Comrades, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you profusely, particularly our speakers, our moderator, our participants, for the time that you dedicated out of your tight schedules from different parts of this country to come here, converge for these 2 hours to be with us. When we were approached by the union to come and have this kind of an occasion, we were happy, because it is few unions that would advise or invite us to this kind of occasions of book launchings, the sharing of platforms. But we accepted, because we have realized the importance of education, particularly on the constituents that we serve, including yourselves. Our mandate is to support trade unions and the trade union movement, as well as activists movement out there, with what we call workers' education, which is still contested as a concept as to what it is by many interested parties in the field. We acknowledge your presence and would like to thank you very much. I would like to release you then to different areas where you come from. I don't know where you're going from here, but the previous, the program director, have food, comrade director, lunch or something, comrade president, do you host us?
Yes, lunch served in the hotel.
At least that omission, critical omission, is addressed. Thank you so much, comrade. You will go to where the lunch is served from now. Amandla.